Above a section in the score, Mahler writes, Der große Appell, the great summons. Offstage horns, followed by a choir of trumpets, herald the moment of truth.
Now, the sense is the judgment's really at hand. And then there is this bird, the bird of death, Mahler says, its trembling flute solo. Which is a very eerie moment, suggesting to us that now really we're going to hear what's in that book that God has for us, and everything is still, and we expect that the next thing would be the judge steps forward and gives his verdict.
There now follows nothing of what had been expected. No last judgment, no soul saved, and none damned. No just man, no wicked man, no judge. Everything has ceased to be. An omnipotent feeling of love illuminates us with blessed knowledge and being.
It's a paradox in the symphony, isn't it? That there's profound reflection on judgment and the context of resurrection, in which there is ultimate accountability. And yet ultimately God is a non-judgmental love. It's not a sentimental love, it's an elemental love, and therefore it's given to all. And yet it's precisely the giving of that love that calls us to accountability. It's because we are loved that we are able to love.
The finale takes the struggles of the protagonist, the individual, and universalizes this journey into one that speaks to all of humanity. This is most symbolically represented by the use of the chorus, where everyone joins in the message of resurrection.
In one of the softest, most mesmerizing moments in music, the chorus enters as if from another plane of existence. At the 1895 premiere, Mahler's sister Justine witnessed the effect.
When the bird of death, hovering above the graves, utters his last, long, drawn-out call, there was such a deathly silence in the hall. Mahler himself said he was afraid for a moment that the long, unbroken silence, requiring the entire audience to hold its breath, could not possibly come off. But no one seemed to bat so much as an eyelid. And when the chorus entered, everyone gave a shuddering sigh of relief. It was indescribable.
We know that the initial inspiration for this text, indeed for the finale itself, was this funeral that he attended for Hans von Bülow in Hamburg. Nevertheless, it must be said that although he borrowed from this very same text that he had heard sung in the church, the Klopstock Ode, Mahler largely authored that text himself. He borrowed from the first portion of the Klopstock text, but the majority of the words actually sung in this last movement are by Mahler himself.
He not only writes a lot of the words himself, but he changes the ode in some very significant ways. First of all, he just leaves off a bunch of stanzas, and that is, I think, quite important, because those are the ones in which Jesus is mentioned, and those are the ones in which a kind of static heavenly bliss of the traditional kind are described. Then he leaves out the one who created you. He changes that to the one who called you. Now that's really interesting, because it downplays the traditional religious picture of God the Creator in favor of the idea of inspiration. God is the one who calls, who inspires the creative soul. And that word, Rief in German, is given tremendous emphasis when it's sung. The soprano soars up.
The message that he ends up with in the text that he himself added to the Klopstock could be taken straight out of Lippener.
In one of his philosophical essays, Siegfried Lippener, the translator of Totenfeier, and one of Mahler's closest friends, proclaimed the birth of authentic spirituality.
We long after the artistic image. We cannot do without an ordering of life's confused turmoil. We may sense the world as a work of art. And in such moments, we are filled by the highest religious agitation.
I think suddenly at the moment of hearing these children singing about resurrection from the Christian perspective, Mahler got the idea, but resurrection could be thought of from a different existential and aesthetic perspective.
Those lines, yours is your longing, yours is your love, are so important, because Mahler is really writing a very new account of what it is about us that survives death.
Our lives are shot through with suffering. So Mahler seems to be suggesting, musically and poetically, that through taking in the deep meanings of our lives, including all the losses, not hiding from the losses, not numbing ourselves to the losses, but suffering them through, a new freedom and ultimately a new life is unleashed.
There is no judgment. There's hardly even any explicit sense of God. This is a very Nietzschean notion of resurrection, one in which the agency of the self has a very direct part.
Mahler finds the springs of creativity in music. Each listener has to ask, what for me is this invisible light? What is the spark of my creativity that I should win in the hot striving of love?
Mahler refers to the hot striving of love. It's a really erotic image, and yet it's a very spiritual poem. This eros is what makes us care. And I think we can each relate to this. If we don't care passionately, if our innermost desires are not engaged, the spirituality is just floating around up there somewhere. It's just about being virtuous. It's this passionate striving that connects together the dimensions of our lives, of everything we care about, that is coming together and coming to a head in this remarkable last movement.